Hey everybody, so we're going to take a little bit of a look back on some hockey history here today. We are going to be looking at one of the worst free agent classes of all time in NHL history, and it's really quite remarkable how literally every big contract signed in this free agency went wrong. Literally every one, and that of course is 2016, which saw some big time money handed out, a lot of it to power forwards, and they literally all went bad. So before we get into it here, I just ask you, please hit that thumbs up and subscribe. Really means a lot and helps out a ton. But let's take a look here. This is absolutely remarkable. Huge money handed out on July 1st, 2016, and literally, like, what's happened to these players, it's honestly quite sad what's happened to a lot of these players, but not a single one of these signings worked out. Not a single one. Let's start. Andrew Ladd, left winger, goes to the New York Islanders on a 7-year deal worth $5.5 million per season. With the New York Islanders, Andrew Ladd only played 181 games. He scored 39 goals and 33 assists for 72 points and a +2 rating. And just this offseason, he was traded to the Arizona Coyotes in a cap dump move by the New York Islanders. He massively struggled with injuries over the past 2 seasons. He only played a total of, I believe, 30 NHL games, and just completely fell off the map after becoming an Islander. And just really, really unfortunate. Obviously, injuries played a huge role in this, but for a guy that locked into a 7-year deal at $5.5 million, for him to only play 181 games over the last 5 years and only have 72 points, obviously a contract that was far from ever working out between Ladd and the Islanders. But don't worry, he was not the only one. Milan Lucic, also a left wing, signed with the Edmonton Oilers. Also a 7-year deal worth $6 million per season. Lucic went on to play 243 games for the Edmonton Oilers. He scored 39 goals, 65 assists for 104 points and a -22 rating. He was eventually traded to the Calgary Flames, where he still plays to this day, and had salary retained in that deal, and obviously now is still an NHLer. At least Lucic, out of all of these guys, is kind of ended up in still being at least an NHL player, and he plays in the bottom 6 in Calgary now, and has had 20 or so points the last few years, but never was the powerful top 6 winger with Edmonton that they signed him to be. And they thought they were going to be getting a 30-goal guy year in and year out, and he was never even close to that in Edmonton, and had a total of 39 goals with the Oilers, not 30 in a season. So obviously Milan Lucic's contract, also really, really bad one there, signed in 2016. We're not done. David Backus, right winger, signed with the Boston Bruins on a 5-year deal worth $6 million per season. He was the former captain of the St. Louis Blues, and everyone thought that Backus was going to be the answer at right wing on David Krejci's second line. And, well, safe to say that was not the case. He played 217 games with the Boston Bruins. He only scored 39 goals, which is funny because Ladd, Lucic, and Backus all ended up scoring just 39 goals with the teams that signed them to these massive contracts. He added 55 assists for 94 points and a +2 rating, and was eventually traded to the Anaheim Ducks in a move to dump his salary by the Bruins. And He contract with just finished with Anaheim this past season. He is now an unrestricted free agent, and it's very much looking like he is going to be retiring. So, obviously, this contract is no more, but a 5-year deal, $6 million per, and he with Boston, and he didn't even score 100 points with the Boston Bruins over the 3+ years that he was there, and ended up being traded in another cap dump move to the Anaheim Ducks, and finished his career, it seems, there, and now he looks like he's going to be out of the league for good. So another contract that didn't work out. But wait, there's more. Franz Nielsen with the Detroit Red Wings. He signed a 6-year deal with Detroit in 2016 worth $5.25 million per year. Went on to play 319 games with the Red Wings, scored just 48 goals and 76 assists for 124 points and a -41 rating. His contract was just bought out last week by Detroit, which was the final year of this deal. And so Franz Nielsen is no longer a Red Wing. He is an unrestricted free agent now after being bought out, and it's very unlikely, I think, that he ever plays in the NHL again. His last couple years in particular were horrible for the Red Wings. And again, 319 games played after signing this contract, only 124 points. This was when he was coming off a monster year with the New York Islanders, and never, ever reached those levels in Detroit. Louis Eriksson, winger, signed with the Vancouver Canucks, a 6-year deal worth $6 million per season. He was coming off a 30-goal season with the Boston Bruins. Boston obviously was not able to re-sign him. He went to Vancouver on a 6x6, and this turned out to be an absolute disaster for Louis Eriksson. He certainly had his injury problems, but he still played 252 games for the Canucks. In those 252 games, he only scored 38 goals and 52 assists for 90 points and had a -25 rating. Eriksson, not even 100 points with Vancouver after signing this 6x6 deal. Contract turned out to be an absolute disaster, and just this offseason, he was traded to the Arizona Coyotes in a cap dump move by Vancouver, who was obviously trying to unload his contract along with some other really bad ones that they've signed over the past few years. So Eriksson also didn't work out. Then we have Kyle Okposo, right winger, signed with the Buffalo Sabres on a huge 7-year deal worth $6 million per season. Now, Okposo still does play for Buffalo, and is actually the only one of these players still playing for the team that signed them to these monster deals. However, he has not been good. His career has absolutely tanked with Buffalo. He was coming off a couple of really good years with the New York Islanders before he signed this deal, and it was all downhill from here. 306 games played, but he's only scored 59 goals and 91 assists for 150 points and a -54 rating with the Sabres. Again, only 150 points in over 300 games with Buffalo. At times, he's been relegated to the 4th line, and his offensive production has absolutely disappeared. Again, another really bad contract here, and another 2016 signing that did not work out. And finally, there's another one that usually doesn't get lumped in with these and doesn't get talked about very much. And this one actually happened on July 2nd, the second day of free agency. But Jason Demers signed with the Florida Panthers on a 5-year deal worth $4.5 million per season. And he only lasted 1 year in Florida. He played 81 games. He had 9 goals, 19 assists for 28 points and a -14 rating. And then that next offseason, he was traded to the Arizona Coyotes, where in Arizona over the last, I believe, 4 seasons, he has only had one season with 20-plus points and has steadily declined with the Coyotes. Does have a year left on this contract, and never has really lived up to being given a 5-year deal at 4.5, and particularly over the past 2 seasons, he's really, really struggled, and this has been a bad contract. So Jason Demers is another one who signed a pretty large deal on free agency in 2016 and never really came close to living up to it. Now, his trade to Arizona was different from Andrew Ladd's and Louis Eriksson's, because his happened, only a year after, and he was actually brought into Arizona to try and be a top 4 defenseman for them, which he hasn't really been, especially over the past couple of years, whereas Ladd and Eriksson were just traded to Arizona this offseason because they were cap dumps, and Arizona has become the bank of the NHL, taking on these really bad contracts in exchange for also getting draft picks. So, anyway, there you have it. This was 7 large contracts signed in free agency in 2016, and none of them worked out. And it's remarkable to me the way that happened and the way that worked out. I mean, when you think about it, every year in free agency, there are some contracts that are signed that end up, being really good, and there are other contracts that are signed that turn out to be, really, really bad. And, that goes for players changing teams. Some moves really work, some don't. That's a normal year. But the fact that literally all of these big players changing teams on big contracts, not only money-wise, but long-term contracts, not a single one of them living up to their contract, not a single one of them working out, really is quite remarkable to me. And I don't know if we'll ever see that again in the NHL, if there's ever going to be a year where literally all of the big signings go bad. That's just, I feel like the likelihood of that is just not very high. And 2016 is definitely an interesting offseason to look back on. I mean, there were some great re-signings in 2016, including Victor Hedman's awesome contract with Tampa Bay. But as far as players changing teams, none of the big signees worked out with their new teams. So just an interesting thing to look back on there, kind of an interesting piece of NHL history. And I don't know, it's something that we may not see again, where literally every contract goes bad like that. It certainly seems unlikely to happen again, at least anytime soon. So with that, like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon, merchandise store, donation link, and memberships are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.